Halloween is the most spectacular time of year. I love it, and I think most people do as well. I suppose for me one of the most exciting things is that it comes from straight out of the Celtic wheel of the year, Samhain. The time when all the food was brought in, either through hunting or through farming. The leaves were coming off the trees, days were getting shorter, animals were going into hibernation. Everything was kind of closing down a little bit, so the Celts decided to have a wonderful foray before they kind of hibernated themselves really. Even though it's considered the new year, it really is the celebration of the old year, whereas the green shoots would be seen in Imbolg on the 1st of February. It's really the terminator of the Celtic festivals, because it started off as Samhain, then got reinterpreted by the Christians as All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, moved to America and was celebrated there. Along the way met up with the Mexican Day of the Dead and became more modern then and came back to Ireland, Europe and the world. And that's very exciting that something so ancient has become so prevalent in our lives today. Of course, it's a big celebration of nuts and fruit, apples and all different kinds of fruit, and of course our friendly pumpkin. Now, it didn't really start off as a pumpkin, it started off as a turnip, but I think anybody who's tried to cut a turnip knows that you'd want a Kango hammer really to get through it. Can be done. So in America then, they discovered pumpkins and it was much easier to carve. And I'm going to show you the best way to carve a pumpkin head now. So now we're going to take the top off the pumpkin. Now what some people like doing, what I've seen people do, is just to cut straight across, almost like the top of a turnip, or even just cut in a circle. But you really want to take the top off in such a way that it's very easy to fit back in, and it only fits back in one way. Now if you can see, most pumpkins will have they have all these lines down, and here there's fairly prominent 5. So I'm going to draw a star, and I'm using a marker, but a thin marker, and not a black marker, a lighter colour really. I'm just using a purple. So, because if you use a black marker, it'll stain the pumpkin, it'll stain your hands, and if you do make a mistake, it's very obvious then with the black marker. So this purple one is perfect. So you can see the way the lines are coming in. Again, it doesn't have to be a perfect star. It's just once the top correlates with the rest of the pumpkin. You can see there is markings there, the star. So now I'm going to cut in. Wish me luck. Say a prayer. And the first, rather than cutting straight in, if you cut at a slight angle, rather than that way, just at a slight angle, you're also ensuring again that the pumpkin is going to, the top is going to sit on the bottom of the pumpkin. And I'm just moving it nicely along. You don't have to tear at it. And this is just a sharp, I think it's called a vegetable knife. I don't know, there's so many knives now for fish and for cheese. But this is a good, sharp, small knife. So, you cut in one, and then we go again. So you can see now it's very easy to put on the top. It's not going to fit any other way, only that way. So, top off, and now the work begins. So if you have younger people in the house, this is probably the best job for them. And I'm using an ice cream scoop. You can use a tablespoon, but the scoop is just that little bit stronger. And what I find is that the handle is made for holding, if you know what I mean. So we start. Again, you have to get all the guts out, because if you leave too much of the guts in, it seems to rot quicker. And the pumpkin will rot because it is, I was going to say an animal, fruit. It's alive, or it was. So in fairness, again, just when you think you have it all cleaned out, I would clean it out just one more time to make sure. teenager or something, but there's a few little things you can do as well. So I'm just going to draw on a very simple traditional face and then take it from there. About a man called Jack. They're called jack-o'-lanterns to begin with, and Jack met the devil, and the devil was up in a tree picking apples as the devil does, and Jack was able to trick him to keep him in the tree until the devil granted him a wish. So Jack's wish was not to be taken to hell. No matter what he did, no matter what sins he committed, he could not be taken to hell. And the devil, who had no other choice, granted him the wish. So Jack went off, had a wonderful life, doing all sorts of devilish things, and when he died, couldn't go to hell, so he thought he'd go straight up to heaven. But of course St. Peter had him up there, little red X by his name. He said, listen, you've been dealing with the devil here, you can't get into heaven. So Jack was condemned to a life on earth and dead. He couldn't get into heaven, he couldn't get into hell. So along the way he asked the devil for help. He said, listen, we had a deal, I know all that, could you give me some little thing? So the devil threw him a coal from hell. And of course it was too hot for Jack to hold in his hands, so he ended up putting it up in, well, he put it into a turnip, but he put it into a surrogate turnip called a pumpkin. Because of the angle you're cutting, you might need to just pierce it at the top and pull it out. And again, you might need to clean it up on the inside. So I know it's like, oh, you're just cutting a triangle, but so many little simple things can go wrong. I've actually never ate pumpkin, and I must have helped people carve hundreds at this stage. So I have it here. You can just twist your knife, so just keep twisting and you'll get fair size circle. It looks like snot. Okay, so now for the mouth. So again, we're trying to keep strategic, so I'm just going to cut along here. And again, you can do all sorts, teeth, fangs. But what I'm going to do here is I cut out the lips, but rather than just slicing into the pumpkin, I'm going to pick away at the skin. That sounds horrible, but rather than going right through, and you'll see what effect that has. Now again, you can just make a hole if you want, but if you want just a little challenge. So what I'm going to do is make another cut, and again, this is getting, for want of a better word, craftier here now. And again, you can just cut it. It's up to yourself, but it's nice to show every procedure on it. And there we go. I'm just going to see how that looks with a candle in it. So I've just put a few more scars, like eyebrows here, and just to emphasize the face a little bit, just to break it up. And it's always good, you do need air going into the pumpkin to make sure the candle lights. Now I'm doing a second one here, a second pumpkin, and it's a little bit more complicated. I'm using more of the carving idea that we did on the lips earlier. And I hope people can see this guy, because I do love South Park, and I do love Butters. So I'm going to do Butters. So I've drawn on the circle, and I've cut out the eyebrows, and I'm using a craft knife this time. You could try it with a kitchen knife, but again, if you want to try something a bit more exciting, the tools are always helpful. So I'm going to cut around, kind of breaking the skin really, cutting around the line I've drawn. Now you do need patience for this, but actually doing something that needs patience can be quite therapeutic really. That went off like a toenail. Not too deep. You can always cut out more, but you can't really put stuff back. So it's kind of like peeling an orange. And of course you might have different depths and stuff, but don't worry about that. But really, where you draw the line, it's better, there's another toenail, it's better to cut inwards. Because if you're cutting outwards, you can not only stab yourself, which is very dangerous, but you can also cut into the piece that you want. So I'm just going to cut out the rest of it now. So here we have the finished pumpkins. We have the more traditional one and Butters from South Park. Just a few more things. I think it's very important when Halloween is over that you don't throw it into the bin. Put your pumpkin out in the garden or maybe in some woodland nearby or something, not in somebody else's garden. But just let it rot away as almost a thank you to Mother Nature, because that's what the Celts would have done. My sister also reckons that the pumpkin can stain wood and stuff, so if you are putting it somewhere and you want to keep it safe, put a little saucer or a plate underneath it. And of course, don't ever leave a naked flame unattended. In fact, you can use a little LED light rather than a candle if you wish. It could be safer. Candles are probably more romantic, but you do have to be careful with them. Happy Halloween, everybody.